I met your new double O. She's a disarming young woman.
I get why you shot him.
Yeah, well, everyone tries at least once.
Hello to you both, and congratulations. I'm a longtime Bond fan, so I'm extremely excited right now. So first of all, I wanted to ask you, Daniel, I just watched, in addition to watching the incredible film, Being James Bond, the documentary, and they showed sort of the last, 16 years later, the last shot when you're walking down this hallway. This is the last shot, not the last shot in the film, that you shot, though, as James Bond. And then I think you walked out and gave a speech. Can you sort of talk about, like, we don't see your face, but walking away, what were those moments like for you?
Get me a drink.
Now.
Where is my drink? Why is it taking so long? Someone must be mixing me a drink somewhere, please. I think along like those lines, yeah. I don't know. I tell you the truth, I can't remember.
Well, you did shoot it a long time ago, but yeah, it's probably.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about, you ask anybody who shot a movie, thinking that the last day is going to be some sort of big celebration or kind of like, yeah, punch in the air moment, that it's always an anticlimax. It's always a sort of, that was a, and that was no different in a lot of ways, because it was back-lot of Pinewood, 2:00 in the morning, rain, cold. It's like, oh, is this it? This is the way we're going to go out. And in a way, it's sort of apt. I thought, great, this is kind of how the way it should be. What was the big surprise was the fact that everybody came to the set, and all of the people came out of the offices, and all of the heads of department came down, and suddenly I'm surrounded by all the people I've been working with, some of them for 20, 30 years. And that was different. I was still thinking about where the drink was, but I was...
Lovely, wonderful Lashana. I absolutely love your performance in this film. When we first meet your character, and this is not a spoiler because it's been in the trailers, you sort of pay homage to the classic Bond girl, because you are, we think you are one thing and then you flip the script. And that's sort of a lot of what, the franchise has become. I wanted you, if you could just sort of walk me through playing that scene and sort of playing the sort of the one side and then flipping it. And then I think you spoke about, like, the first few times you acted opposite Daniel, you had to check yourself for a second. You had to sort of say, oh my gosh, like, stay in it.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
I mean, that moment was a lot of things in one for me, because I was shooting in Jamaica. I'm Jamaican, so that was really weird. I was staying in a hotel, not my family, and that was weird. It was, the first scene, which is a really important scene in the movie.
The big scene, right?
It's literally first day, plunges straight in, right, two-hander in. Like, we didn't even have much time to rehearse the day before, so like, there was a lot to it, but also, I didn't want to think about... I didn't want to think about the history of the franchise. I just wanted to have a conversation with Bond.
And she nailed it anyway, so,
Thank you.
It's like it's all moot.
I mean, my mind was racing that day. I just thought, I don't want to make it too heavy, like you just said. I don't want to think about the past. I don't want to even think about the future. And I was thinking about actors and what that means. And, but then there's me. Gosh, my journey into the industry. Like, literally, my mind was working on 100. And I had to just put everything down. Even the sides I had to just throw away at one point and think, you know it. It's in there. You have prepared for Nomi. Nomi is going to come out. So just let her be. And let her have a really honest conversation with Bond, which she did. And it's such a powerful scene. Every time I see it, I think, gosh, she's serious about this stuff. She just is on a whole other level in her own lane. And it was beautiful to be able to really reflect women in the franchise, but also really nice for her to have her own stamp too.
Daniel, you've always, since the beginning, you've really held true to, you've stuck to your guns, to not to use a, pun from the film, but you've stuck to your guns creatively in terms of what you wanted for the franchise. And, you've changed the franchise in a lot of ways. So I'm wondering, when you decided to come back for this last film, was the ending always what it was going to be? Was that something creatively that you decided, or was it in flux?
It's a long process, and we kind of we had ideas. I've had ideas since the very beginning, and I kind of want to, I wanted to sort of, bring I wanted to bring all that we'd sort of put into the past 4 movies and try and round them off in this movie. That was so important to me. And the fact that I'd been given this chance to tell a story from the beginning was like, I mean, that's one of the biggest difference I think with the movies I've made is that we've had a link from the beginning, and we certainly try and tie that link from the beginning to this one.
Lashana, we never find out what your drink of choice is. You're a 00. His is, a martini. What is yours?
Literally, I like chamomile flowers, literally. Sparkling water.
Sparkling water.
I know.
Racy.
Bubbles with lime. Oh my gosh. Put it on the front page.
Yeah.
I didn't know if I wanted Nomi to drink or not. I was thinking about how she views Bond and things she's heard over the years, known over the years, how she's learned him through a document. And I wondered if how much she respected or didn't respect him because of how much he drinks. Do you know what I mean? Not like he drinks all the time,
Yes,
but he drinks all the time. And she's like, well, how are you focusing on work if you're constantly drinking?
Very well, thank you.
But I'm fine.
I've always wondered, Daniel, if he was a better agent, tipsy or sober?
He's never drunk. You noticed?
Literally never.
He's got quite a constitution. Listen, I think it's a gag. It's a running gag. I love the fact there's someone, a very nice Russian journalist a few years ago made me a chart, and it was all the Bonds and all the drinks they've had,
Oh my God.
and I'm at the top. And I was like, yeah, that's great. And I feel like it's a sort of nice gag because, of course, it's ridiculous. Nobody can drink that much and function and do all the things. But he's James Bond. It's just like, and I'm not advocating people drink at work for a second. It's a really bad idea. But it's fun. It's just fun. That's all.
Have you seen Drunken Master?
What's that?
There's a kung fu film called Drunken Master,
Oh, is
and
it
he
good?
relies on drink to be better.
There's drunken histories as well.
That part. Yeah. Watch it, you'll see what I mean.
His name is Safin.
And what does he want?
Revenge. Me.
Bonjour, ça va?
Bonjour, ça va bien? Et vous? Vous êtes à Los Angeles ou?
At Los Angeles, I'm trying to speak
go,
French
it's
because I'm
early.
Canadian. I know a little bit, but anyway, I just wanted to say how beautiful a film this was in terms of this relationship between Madeline and Bond. And there was a scene that really struck me, and it's not a spoiler, but you're sort of like holding each other and you're looking at each other, and there was something about the way he touched you. I said to myself watching it, this is how a man really in love touches a woman. And it's very hard to act something like that. So if you could kind of talk about how you did create that intimacy with Daniel, that we get those real moments on screen, that I completely believed it.
Yeah, it's true that in Inspector it was not that incarnated in a way, and so I really wanted this time when I read the script, and I wanted, like, my goal was to make this relationship believable. And I wanted, like, not to think about the fact that we were, like, in a James Bond film, but really like a love story between a man and a woman. And so for that, Cary was great because he wrote those scenes, those very intimate scenes. And yeah, I mean, they were great. I mean, they were great to shoot, and I think they were, like, also, like, it was important for the audience, to understand the real bond that they have together.
Yeah, I've been using that phrase today too. I'm just going there. Everybody seemed very bonded in this movie. So the fact that this is the first woman to come back and have a 2-film arc, what do you think is so special about that connection between Madeline and Bond? And because the first one was so shrouded in mystery, who she is, but we see a lot more of her. Can you speak about how does she feel about him? Is he the love of her life? How does she see him?
Yeah, I think, I mean, yes, she is, he is. it's interesting because I think that Daniel, gave so much depth to his character, and so we needed to have, in front of him, like, also a more complex woman, and so so that's the reason why at the beginning of the film we see her with her mother, and we understand that she's like James Bond in a way, very damaged, and they've in a way shared the same the same problems. I mean, he's an orphan. We all know that he's an orphan, and I am too. So I think that's why they are so connected. It's because they understand each other, and yeah, it's also amazing because it's the first time that we see a Bond girl who's just vulnerable. It's vulnerable, and we get to understand her childhood, and where she comes from. Like the first scene, it's her. I mean, it's her and her mother, and then it's really, I think it gives like just more reality, and more. It's more real, real.
What, as an actress, bringing those emotional scenes to set, I think there were some set photos where you were just, in between takes, super emotional. So if you can talk about how that was for you, bringing that emotion, and how challenging it was for you.
It was very challenging, very emotional, and also because it is Daniel's last James Bond. And that, when you saw the pictures, I think they were taken the day we shot the final scene, and it was very intense. Yeah, emotionally, it was the end of the shooting, and I was just overwhelmed, and and it was. I mean, it's difficult to act, It's not an easy thing, and yeah, it was. I felt a bit. I would say I felt the pressure a bit, and I really wanted to give the best.
Yeah. Well, it's a beautiful performance. There's something really gorgeous in the beginning of the film, and this is, no spoilers, but where your character and Daniel sort of write something on a piece of paper and then burn it just to let it go. What are sort of like a couple of words that you would use as sort of like a beautiful memory that you take from working on the James Bond films?
Oh, you're gonna make me cry. No, it was extremely emotional. Like even now, it's like we're doing this promotion. A year and a half has passed. I feel extremely grateful, and it's been like an amazing experience. It's not only work; it's a human experience, and working with all those amazing people, and also Cary, the director. I'm very thankful to him because he gave me this part, and Barbara Broccoli, Michael Wilson, the producers. I mean, I feel extremely lucky, very, very lucky, and it's something that I will cherish, those memories all my life, and it's really, it is.
Yeah, James Bond is a fun
experience. It's a big part of my life. Sorry.
You just made me cry. So thank you very much for being so sweet. And I'm just tearing up. This is supposed to be James Bond, a fun escape, and we're all crying.
We both eradicate people to make the world a better place. I just want to be a little tidier.
Safin is amazing. He is so good. Now, I heard that you and Cary, that you actually started talking to him about this role even before Bohemian came out, and that you would send him tapes with different iterations of Safin's voice. You were kind of working out different accents. How many different sort of accents, if you could talk us through that? And can we release those tapes? Can we see them, Rami?
I don't know if it was tapes so much as, yeah, maybe we were, it's so long ago that I can't remember if it was tapes or if I was traveling back and forth to London. I was still shooting Mr. Robot, so we were coming up with ideas. Cary thought of a few different countries and specific time periods of those countries he wanted to hear. So I would give him those, and there were many moments where I thought to myself, listen, we always go to a certain country for villains, or, we've heard of the stereotypic villain voice, so I would start to amalgamate certain countries and voices that I thought were interesting. You could kind of guess what they might be, but we live in a world where whatever is very foreign to us can sometimes feel very scary. So the more of I felt you couldn't pin him down, I thought the more threatening he would be.
Ooh, that works. Well, speaking of scary, I know there's something you've talked about that sometimes you take the roles that scare you the most. What about tackling Safin scared you, that made you go, ooh, it scares me, I got to do it?
There's an element of him where he can just detach from his own, any type of empathy or morality in order to just brutally exact his will. And, he's straight to the point. The guy is no BS as far as I'm concerned.
I wish I could be more like that.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if anybody wants to be more like him.
Maybe just a little bit, this much.
Maybe.
I know you crafted your own villain for this. There are so many famous Bond villains. If you could have like an all-stars and go toe-to-toe against a past Bond villain and see who is the baddest baddie, who would you go toe-to-toe with? Who would Safin go toe-to-toe with?
I have to say there's one specific scene in Casino Royale with Mads Mikkelsen and Daniel Craig. I think you know what I'm talking about, and I would hate to ever be in Daniel's position for that scene.
Yes. I actually thought maybe you were going to talk about Javier Bardem's scene.
Yes.
Being on the receiving end of a seduction scene with Javier Bardem, but you know.
Yeah, no, that was a very unique take, and you're talking about some of my favorite actors. What Javier did, what Mads did. I mean, all of the guys that Daniel's had to go up against, Matthew and of course Christoph, have just been such fierce adversaries. So it's just great to find myself in a long list of talented men I admire.
Well, you are among them and you top the list. And watching that scene, I want to know for you as an actor, when you come onto a franchise, the first time you and Daniel locked eyes.
You've seen those piercing blue eyes. It's difficult to pull yourself away. I remember the first time he came and saw me, and I was in my makeup chair and just taking a break, and I caught him by surprise, but I could tell he was a little taken aback by the prosthetics. And of course, on set, when I saw him in action, I was a little taken aback by just how James Bond he actually is.
How James Bond is he?
He is a commanding presence. He's a great leader. He's very altruistic, selfless. You get this feeling that he's really looking out for the greater good. Daniel for the film, for the actors, and for the crew, and of course, James Bond for the world at large.
You just almost said it like Bond, James Bond. That was very good.
Yeah.
Typically in the past, we've seen some villains like stroking a cat. There's even YouTube videos with just that. What is Safin saying? Like, is it his herb garden? And could you ever see yourself being inspired by Safin and having your own garden, Rami? It's the stupidest question. But
no, it's not. I mean, didn't everybody, so many of us started gardening over the last couple years? What I love about that Zen garden, it is just so iconic Bond. If you know the early Bonds, they're designed by Ken Adams, and his sets were, they go down in cinematic history. And we have a production designer's name's Mark Tildesley, and he tried to pay homage to those sets. And that was a breathtaking moment for me, stepping onto the 007 stages and seeing my own poison garden. I mean, what could be more Bond than that? I guess a cat.
Okay, last question, the most Bond thing of ever. James Bond has his martinis. What does Safin drink?
Safin steals James Bond's martinis, and I suppose if he wants it shaken, then he'll just get there and stir it, and vice versa. Just really throw him off.
And sprinkle a few herbs from the garden in there?
Possibly. You're getting close.
Harder to tell the good from bad, villains from heroes these days.
First question to you both is, there's a famous story about how when Daniel Craig found out he got the role of Bond, he was in a supermarket getting groceries, ditched the groceries, went and got martini mix, got properly sloshed. So for each of you, first I'll start with you, Jeffrey. When you found out you were coming back after so many years, what was the first thing that you did? And then Billy, first time in a Bond film. What was the first thing you did?
Well, I've heard that story.
I heard a different story. Did you hear that story?
Daniel and I actually had a few drinks together when he got the gig, because we were doing a movie together. I wasn't with him at the grocery store, but I definitely joined him for some drinks after that. So it's been, for me, at the time, I didn't know I was going to be a part of it. I was, they kind of invited me on a little bit later. But what's been cool about it is to be there for this, for the start of this thing with him, and then to join the thing and round it out at the end here is pretty gratifying. I was obviously excited to come back and kind of finish off the arc. So I don't remember what I did, but I remember I showed up in Jamaica and found Billy there.
Hey, buddy.
You showed up in Jamaica.
For me, Daniel might have had his martinis in the thing, but for me, the real joy was to be with Billy.
Oh, buddy, Jeffrey, you're so sweet. So when they you didn't finish the story. I was the bartender making their martinis at the time. Yeah.
Billy was the celebration for all of us, I think.
No, you're a sweetheart. You are a sweet. I really love you, Jeffrey. I do.
Oh, I love this quote unquote bond between the two of you. I hate even using that word. But
I love the pun. I love it. Very, very strong. I was actually on backpacking trip in Vietnam, standing outside a address. I don't know why this address was 007. There's no reason the address should have been 007. But when I got the text about it, yeah. Because it just be 7? It wouldn't be 007.
That is wild.
Yeah.
That is very serendipitous. Jeffrey, you have now worked on the greatest trifecta, Marvel, DC, and Bond. How would you describe Bond as being distinctly different from those other massive properties? What is the feeling on set that sets it apart?
I don't know if there's. Well, I'll tell you. I mean, there's a really kind of modest feel on set, and that's simply because there's so many of this familiar faces that work on these projects in front of the camera and also behind the camera. They're crew members that have worked on Bond films for decades. So it's a really, kind of like family vibe on the set that's unlike any other project that I've worked on. And Bond is singular. I've worked on some large franchises, but Bond is there's no bigger fish in the pond than Bond, simply because it's lasted for how many decades now? Was it 7, 8 decades now? So it's there's nothing like this thing. The others are really wonderful franchises to be a part of as well. But yeah, Bond is in some ways separate from all of them.
Billy, you were brought on, and there's a really fun scene in the beginning where Daniel's almost making fun of your smile. Like, he says he smiles a lot. Was that in the script? Was that written specifically for you? Because you are, you have a great smile.
I think they were making fun of me, to tell you the truth. I don't know.
Look at this cheeky smile. The entire script was written around Billy's lovely smile.
So that wasn't an improv. That was a Daniel improv that was written in the script.
Yeah, that was definitely in the script. And I just, you'll have to find out more when you see the movie, I guess. There's a lot of mystery here. There's a lot of, there are a lot of coded kind of mysterious things here. and Billy's smile might be at the
Part of
top
the
of that
game.
list. You should have asked about his nipples, though, and then
They're working. They're working.
I wasn't going to say, but hey, if you're pointing it out, Jeffrey, thank you for that.
I think they cut that out of the script, though, unfortunately.
When her secret finds its way out, it'll be the death of you.
You can imagine why I've come back to play.
First question I want to ask you, right off the get-go, the opening of the film, you sort of have talked about how you threw the kitchen sink at everything. You gave everybody the classic Bond tropes they want, but the opening feels very different than a traditional Bond film. It's the first time we don't really see James Bond doing the James Bond thing. It almost feels like a horror movie. Can you discuss sort of like the thinking behind that and why you wanted that element in the beginning?
Well, we'd heard Madeline tell this story in Spectre about what happened in her childhood home. And it was an anecdote that we'd been throwing around that could come in different parts of the story. We even thought about putting it somewhere in the middle. And then it sort of occurred to me, about 3 months before we shot it, that it actually felt like a really good opener. It's like, why don't we play with the ideas of trust that exist, or these themes of lack of trust that have existed since Casino Royale? Show a little bit of this anecdote, which in the canon the fans will know, but it's a great teaser, and then set up this the villain out of these first 4 minutes. And it does have elements of horror, which I think maybe are outside of the normal Bond film. But it's the exhilarating form of horror. So I think it does still come into the thrilling aspect.
Talk about thrilling. The stairwell scene, I had such a visceral reaction to it that I almost couldn't watch it. It was that intense.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I think that's what's so beautiful about the way you shot. You shoot things. People are talking about, how you shot the famous scene in True Detective, and this sort of has that same wonder element to it. Can you sort of just talk about how difficult that was to pull off and working with Daniel in crafting that scene?
About a week ago when we were doing press, no one had seen the film, they asked me if they could expect stuff like we did in True Detective. And I didn't really want to talk too much about, those kind of things. I like them to be a surprise. Just I like, for you to experience it rather than be waiting for that section to happen. So I think the craft side of things is always fun when, especially with Daniel, just kind of conceiving of how we're going to handle certain sections of the film. I think the idea of the audience's reaction to it is as important as, the story and the execution, and the execution is part of how the audience can react to it. So it's all part of the same sort of, if you want to think of it when you're cooking a meal, it's all part of the spices you want to put in there and the layers of flavors that will make it the most sort of exciting and thrilling experience for an audience. So I think that was the goal is that every 10 minutes you're in this story, and it just keeps progressing and pushing and propelling forward, and doesn't really give you a full respite to kind of tune out and think about something else. It keeps you hopefully engaged all the way through. And in that moment, as we're getting towards the end of the film, it's like we're propelling them to that final section. So we need that last little bit of adrenaline, I think, injected in it.
What important Bond elements, very Bond elements, did you want to bring into this film that were sort of like Easter eggs, nods, and that to what we consider classic James Bond?
I think on Her Majesty's Secret Service and You Only Live Twice were two of the kind of classic Bond films that really informed style, content, themes, characters in this film. Those are two, I think, of my favorites, and I think that they really they're if you think about relations within the Bond canon, those are very close relations to this one.
Which lent itself to the line about having more time from On Her Majesty's Secret Service.
Exactly, that famous line at the end.
Yeah. Martin Campbell did two Bond films with two different James Bonds. Would you want to come back and do another one? Obviously, we're not going to have the beloved, amazing Daniel Craig, but is that something you're interested in? I know you've talked a lot about, as a storyteller, wanting to do, what's inspiring and challenging you moving forward. So would you want to come back and do another?
Well, Nick, I think it's exactly that. It's like if that opportunity were to come in the future, where am I at my creative process? Is it something I would want to take on? Is it a new challenge? Is it something that fits the moment in time of my life? These films are really, they're all encompassing and all engrossing when you're working on them. They take up every aspect of your life. it's like Monday through Monday. So, I'd have to be at a place where like I had that time I can really commit and throw at it, because I wouldn't want to do it unless I could do it right.
Without spoilers, how much was Daniel instrumental? How much were you instrumental in creating the final act for Bond? Was that something you always knew where he was going to end up the final act of this film, or was that in flux?
We didn't know where, the wheres and hows, but we knew, how he wanted the story to end. And we knew how he wanted his service to end, in terms of like relationship with MI6 and the 00 program. We knew exactly how all that was supposed to end up. So that's kind of like, that was an end piece. We didn't really have the beginning. I had a few middle pieces that, Barbara and Michael and Daniel really wanted to hit, and new characters they wanted included. So those are things I knew about, sort of, if you think about like building blocks and coming up with the story. But the circumstances around everything were completely, part of the creative process on this one.
The past isn't dead.
Thank you for an incredible series. I mean, this is my favorite franchise. It always has been since I was a little girl. So thank you for continuing to carry it on. So I'm going to jump right in. I have a ton of questions. First of all, the question's for Barbara. Daniel has talked a lot about that moment when you called him and you said those famous words, "Over to you, kiddo." And I just thought that was such a refreshing way. Rather than hear actors say, "You got the role," their agent calls. It was so unique. Is this your catchphrase? Are you going to say it to the next one?
No, that was just for him. I mean, it was such a crazy situation because we were trying to connect. And he was in Baltimore shooting. I was in London. And somehow I was on the street corner and he was in Whole Foods in Baltimore. Not exactly how you imagine to impart this news. And, we were on the phone and I said, "Well, over to you, kiddo." And the rest is history. I mean, he's been magnificent. 15 years of extraordinary dedication to this series. And, he's just magnificent.
And you're actually leading me into my next question, because I do really love him. And I've loved so many Bonds in the past. If you could maybe, Michael, talk about something that we don't know, that he has shown his level of commitment on screen, but I watched the documentary and it really hit home. The level of commitment, and how few actors, I could probably count them maybe on one hand in history, that have had that level of commitment. So if you could share maybe a moment that sort of awed you, where you were just like, wow, when you saw him as you were on set.
Well, I thought it was amazing that to prepare, we've all heard, the actor prepares, but he actually changed his body, changed his whole body in the most amazing way. He lost a lot of weight lost inches on his waist and gained weight. I mean, it's the most amazing transformation I've ever seen. So right then, and when he was making the film, very often, you see actors that love to go out in the evening and have a drink after work and all that. He would go and do more exercise. He'd take a very modest dinner and then go to bed extremely early, and he was so disciplined. He just took the work so seriously. He's the most disciplined actor I've ever seen. He always knows his lines. He's always there. He's always on time. He's very committed to what he's doing. He takes whatever free time he has, he'll go out and rehearse with the stunt men. The level of commitment is unbelievable. He's also an amazing person. Besides
and that comes across. I mean, the humanity always comes across on screen, no matter how good an actor somebody is. And I think that's why he's endured and been so endearing. I found myself, I was, I know you had the premiere simultaneously. I was in LA watching the screening at the same time. And I had chills when I the moment that it went from black to the first opening shot, goosebumps. There's this franchise just brings that about, that level of excitement. I want to know for both of you at the premiere, what is that like for you after you work on these films for years and years and years to hear the audience reaction? Does it ever surprise you where they laugh, where they, what was that moment like for you this time around?
Well, it was, relief really, because it was the first time, we've had a public performance of the film. It was very important to us that we do it at the Albert Hall, that we show the film in England where the film was made. We had many, many of our crew and cast there. And, the thing about Daniel's portrayal of this character has been, it's very much about service and personal sacrifice. And, after the terrible 18 months that we've all come through, we really wanted to celebrate, obviously, Daniel, but also everyone else who has, helped us get through the pandemic. And so it was important to us that we had frontline workers there, healthcare workers. And we're doing a similar thing in the United States because, we really want to thank people for everything they've done to help get us through this terrible time.
Do you have, I know Ian Fleming had his do's and don'ts for Bond. Do you have your own do's and don'ts?
I don't think we necessarily have a list, but we instinctively know where the limits are, where the red lines are. And it's interesting. Barbara and I don't sit down and discuss it, but we both come up with the same reaction when we get to a point where we say that isn't going to work. I think
you look at, you're like stealth. You look at each other and it's like this unspoken thing.
We don't even have to look at each other. It has become instinctive over, we both work with Cubby and we've been at this a long time. So we have a pretty good instinct about what to do, how far we can go.
I, for the first time, found myself watching this movie. In the past, I'm looking for different things in a film. Of course, you want the big set pieces. But for the first time, I looked at the character and I went, I just want him to be happy. And I think that has a lot to do with the heart that Daniel brought to it. I'm curious, is it the chicken or the egg? When you cast Daniel, he brought a lot of different elements to Bond that we hadn't seen before. So is it that you find the actor and then he brings that and you sort of evolve with the character, or were you looking for that sort of grittiness or a different approach?
Well, we had the great fortune to get the rights to Casino Royale, which, my father had wanted to make originally. So, I mean, that was the opening to be able to transform this character, to reset him. And in order to do that, we had to find an actor who was up for the challenge and could, really explore the inner life, the emotional life of Bond. And Daniel was the obvious person. I mean, he's just such a magnificent actor. And, I think, what he's done over the past five films has been extraordinary. And, the audiences love him and they seem to be responding extremely well to this movie. So we're very, very grateful.
Oh, yeah. I mean, undoubtedly. I know you're not thinking about the next James Bond to next year. I don't want to know. I hope you surprise us again. But is there any element of James Bond you haven't explored?
I mean, I hope so. That's for the future. Hopefully we'll find something that we haven't explored before. But we've been mining an awful lot over these past few films. So let's hope there's still some stuff left for the future.
And I think we're also in a time where, there's going to be so many characters off this film that are going to pop. Paloma, I loved her. Nomi, Q. Yeah. Would you ever potentially consider a spinoff? We're in this era where everybody wants to explore universes, like whether it's TV, a streaming, whether it's on the big screen. One thing I think has made James Bond successful is that it's not a lot of characters. You're focused on one person. That said, and that's what's made it successful. That said, would you consider it?
I think we feel like you do, that the success of these films is the central character. So we haven't done that in the past. And I don't think we have any plans to do it in the future, but who knows?
Well, I think, Michael, you maybe said it, that you brought the kitchen sink to this film. You gave us the Bond tropes, but you also gave us something fresh. Can you talk about maybe one of your favorite tropes that you got to bring to this film in terms of set pieces or just giving the fans what they want and what they love about James Bond, that classic James Bond?
Well, I think one of the things is that we try to give the fans something they may not expect, something that will surprise them, but be within the universe of James Bond. And I think with Daniel, we had the opportunity to do that because he was an actor who could develop those ideas. And you know from seeing the film how we were able to bring a lot of new elements to it, put Bond in a lot of situations, the personal ones, the family ones, have him face a woman 007 as a replacement, have him face M, who has a big issue to hide and deal with, and the villain, and a existential threat to the world. So, you know, I think we put him through a lot of things here, and some I don't think were anticipated by the audience.
Right. Wow, definitely. That's for sure. I'm not going to say anything more. But the first time that I saw Daniel in Casino Royale and he comes out of the water, were you paying homage to him in this film? We saw the shower shot. We saw him a couple very sexy shots. Was that kind of bringing it all full circle?
Absolutely. I mean, yes, the shower scene was one I was particularly fighting for. And he looks great.
If we don't do this, there will be nothing left to save.
I have to finish this. You ever flown like this?
Nope.